You need more correctors.
That didn't work out the way I planned.
Okay, I have 6:30. If we could please call our meeting to order. And if I could, we're starting with a public hearing.
Yes. Yes, so we are here to begin the process of talking about our 2022-2023 budget. And Mike and I have some slides that we wanted to share with you tonight to kind of give you a state of the district, and then to also give some additional information about some of the federal stimulus money and how we've been putting that to good use to help kids and staff. So I'm going to sit, if it's okay. My back's a little bad today, and rather than grunt and groan, I'm going to sit here and talk with you if that's all right.
Please do.
So again, a lot of these slides, for those of you that have been on the board for a while, they're going to look very, very familiar, and to me that's a good thing. That means that we have established over time a nice process for identifying the needs of kids and our staff in the district, recognizing what it is our community is able to support, and then to put that process in place. So you'll see that we don't like to predict, we don't like to guess, we like to take our time and be thoughtful when information becomes available. We also will work closely with our Budget and Finance Committee to create various budget scenarios to present to you as the process moves forward, and for you to give us some feedback in. This is a popular slide every year. It gives the community and folks that work for our district a nice understanding of where it is that we distribute our budget dollars once a budget is passed. So for the 21-22 school year, our current school year, you can see that just about 80%, so 79% of our budget dollars that were approved by the voters last May goes to instruction. And that's shouldn't be surprising because obviously that's what we're in the business of doing. But that number is quite high compared to some other districts, certainly that I've heard of or worked in. So we should be proud of that. We should celebrate that. 9% of our distribution of our budget dollars go to general support, 8% pupil transportation. We have a large geographic district. Our staff does a wonderful job, as you know, of making sure that kids get to school and home safely with the newest and best buses that we have that we can put our kids in with all the safety features. But that's 8% where our budget dollars are spent. School lunch, 2%, and our debt service, which is paying off past capital projects, is 2%. Now, we talked about where we spend our money, and this is where we get our money from. And for the current school year, you can see the largest piece of this pie is New York State aid at about 55% of our current year's budget. Our next highest revenue source is the tax levy at 39%. The reserves that we plan into our budget each year, 3%. Our fund balance, 2%, and then local sources, 1%. These are budget guidelines. We shared them with you the last time. We're going to actually ask you to officially approve them. But like I had mentioned earlier in the conversation, these have not changed. Again, these are things that we take really seriously. We continue to develop and execute options to make sure that we're maximizing our impact of all the programs that we put in place. We keep our strategic plan in mind. Obviously, we want to make decisions based upon the priorities that we identified in that document just a few years ago. We want to listen to the community, make sure that they understand what it is that we're doing, that we gather input from them, and put those plans in place to help kids. We want to obviously stay within the structure of the law, so that we want to make sure that we're in compliance with our tax levy limit and tax levy process. And the big one here at the end is the use of federal stimulus money. As you know, we have been granted some federal stimulus money, and Mike is going to spend some time later in the presentation talking to you about those stimulus funds and how we put them in place to help kids. Michael?
Sure. Thank you. So just taking again a look at the COVID federal stimulus money, the biggest piece to know from this is that through the stimulus funds, the release of these funds has gone out over a period of time. So at this time, and what you're going to see in the next few slides, is essentially what the district has planned to put in place using the stimulus money. With that process, we put a plan in place. We applied to do the different pieces of the puzzle here for each grant, and then the state gets back to us whether they approve it or how they're going to approve it, what modifications or what data they have to see, which is very, very important. So if you take a look at the Sr1 funding, the Sr1 funding we actually put into last year's budget. So the Sr1 funding went into the 19-20 budget, $383,960, and we put that money again towards our existing social workers, supplies and materials. Again, we are purchasing a lot of cleaning materials, a lot of PPE during that time, and also equipment. If you remember going fully remote the prior year, and then coming into last school year, trying to bring children back to school, and in that process, again, Chromebooks and the software to go along with them were our key focus. So along with that, the GER funding for $63,319. Again, bringing all that software and technology into the district, or adding to it, or modifying, or adding different platforms. We did put that money towards a PC support specialist in Mr. Finn's department for that, and then found a place to see how we would continue to fund that moving forward. So then we get into the newer money, the Sr2 monies, again at $1.6 million, which we've applied for and received approval for those monies. Now, when you take a look there, some of the pieces, we had to match up. So there were a framework to each one of these grants for stimulus money. So we had to make sure we were addressing our E&L students. We had to make sure that we were addressing our disadvantaged students. We had to make sure that we were addressing children that had what was been referred to as a COVID slide. So taking that data and addressing that through the information that we were putting together. So again, another E&L teacher, adding that in. Social workers at the elementary and intermediate school. Again, family support liaisons, which were a new position. Something that we found as we started to put that position in place this year, that there were many different ideas of what that position could be. And we were able to secure one person into that position for this year. But we put funding in that to have one person in every building. Staff, last summer we did our enrichment program for reading and for different enrichment programs, which we will continue. One of the biggest pieces in Sr2 was in our pre-K program. Now, the state went ahead and issued additional federal funding for the pre-K classrooms themselves, which was outstanding. And again, there's talk that will continue and increase through next year. In working with our special education department and the other administration, we looked at how could we make sure that not only students that were currently in the district were receiving service, but how did we identify right from the very get-go children that may need service coming in or learning gaps coming in, and offering that assistance at the ground level at the elementary school. So through the grant, we brought in a pre-K special education teacher, an occupational therapist, a speech language therapist, and a school psychologist. As part of this, because one of the focuses that has to be as we go through this grant money is how are we going to support these items when the grant runs out, or when the funding runs out. Working with Mr. Moore, Chris really took the bull by the horns here and went out and sought that if we're offering service, and a lot of, especially the pre-K services, are offered by counties, are offered by the counties where the children live. Well, the hard thing is, especially with the COVID, is that counties don't have the personnel to offer these services for the children. But if we are able to bring personnel in through these grants, Chris has been working with and applying through the state in each of the 4 counties that we work with, then to have our people become the service providers for the county. Thus, they would be reimbursing us for our service, thus finding a means to continue these programs or continue these staff placements after the COVID money runs out. So again, it's something that the district is doing to look to be proactive, that once the federal funds run out, you're going to see these positions show up again in grants, because we want to continue this through the grant money running through 2024. But again, lessening the reliance on the grant money as we move through, and you'll see that as we move through with some of the other items that we're ticketing in the grants. Through that, we talked about HVAC systems and HTEC. That's one of the things we had talked about. And for communication purposes, we've also looked at, and it's been a discussion among budget and finance, looking at outdoor marquees. How can we put digital marquees out? You've seen them out for other districts, other schools, to get that information out to folks real time. That may be something that goes along with what they're currently receiving through Parent Square. Through our supplies and materials, looking at a social emotional screener. We've already put that in place in researching and bringing someone in to work with our staff through the -2. And again, supplies and materials to clean and sanitize, prevent the spread of infection. And again, with technology purchases, Mr. Finn can attest that we have our interactive boards that we've purchased through this grant to increase the availability of those within the district. But like everything else, we're waiting to put them up because we're waiting on the materials to put them up. We have the boards here in district, we're waiting on the materials to put them up. But that is in process. I can ask for questions on each slide if that works better for people, if questions are fresh in their minds, or if you'd like me to continue, I can walk right through the grants, whatever people wish.
I want to continue. And
I'll keep talking.
Keep rolling.
So going on to our next of our stimulus money, this is the big piece. This is the American Rescue Plan funds. And again, this is staffing through 2023. And again, you're going to see through the ARP plan at the bottom of the page. It then continues through 24. So as I said, you're going to see some of the same positions coming up. What we're doing during this period with the grants, we're doing the same process that we did for pre-K. Is that we're building them and having an opportunity to start to build these positions into our budget, but we're really seeing where they fit and really if it's worth at the end of the grant period to continue on with some of these positions or where we fall with them. So again, capital improvements under the American Rescue Plan, this is where we saw that $2 million of the capital project. So this would be under that $3 million piece of the American Rescue Plan. Again, supplies and materials, again, those are boilerplate. When we go through each one of the grants, that has to be in there. So whether you're looking at PPE or whether you're looking at some of the other pieces, they have to be in there as part of the grant. Moving on through that, then there's the American Rescue Plan. This is to stop the spread of learning loss, to add in summer enrichment, after school activity. We've had staff members submit to us ideas to start up in the second semester with programming, whether it be enrichment or to stop learning loss after school activities. But other pieces of the puzzle we've put in here is salary for mental health service providers. Once we put that -2 in place, the next natural piece of that is that we're going to need providers. We're going to get a good idea of where we stand through these assessments. Then we can use grant funding to see what providers we need to put in place. Again, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. We want to be thoughtful in our approach and then using the grant monies as well. Tutoring paid for professional staff, salaries for our instructional coaches, for ENL teachers, paid for extended day program, after school program. And another piece of this was something that as we went through a negotiation in the last bus driver contract, we spoke with the bus drivers and we said, in order to make this work, we have 2 bus runs in the morning, 2 bus runs in the afternoon. If we were to do an after-school program or a set of after-school programming, we're going to need to put an extra bus run at the end. Would bus drivers be willing to drive a 3rd run on days that we offered that program? They said absolutely we would. So again, that's something that we work to negotiate with them, and then using this funding through 2024 to do so. So looking at this, there's another piece of this, again, through the ARP. Purchase services, again, collaboration, our TCIS program with Cornell. Software license, again, for evidence-based programming. When we address the learning loss, what interventions are we going to put in place? Again, it being a process. find where we're finding the gaps, and then purchase the software. Don't purchase the software first and then find out what the gaps are and try to meld them together. But thoughtful in that process. Again, social emotional programs. It seems very basic, and that was probably the easiest way I could state it on the slide, but again, those programs that we're going to find that are evidence-based, based on the BIMAS 2, based on curriculum, a lot of things are already going on in the district to try to piggyback and dovetail on those programs. With Mr. Lisi, we had talked about contracted use of outside places like the J.M. McDonald Center to run some outside activities in colder weather. We're kind of limited by our space with our sports teams being in our gyms after school, so looking to go outside of that in order to find extra space. Is that the only place we'd look? No, but this is just an example of where we would look. One of the thoughts too that came through in some of our talks and programming is that park and admission fees, state park fees, or other admission fees to parks, things of that nature, if we do enrichment, that we would be able to include those fees in the programming. So include them as part of the grant, not asking families to take that money out of their pockets, but something to be thoughtful as we put these programs together. What are those additional contractual costs that we're going to have in order to make some of these programs happen? I can tell you as a parent in the district, I'm not much of a hiker, but my son had the opportunity to go to the Adirondacks with one of the week-long enrichment programs, and I may have to eventually bite the bullet and walk up a small hill in the Adirondacks. But that is, again, part of the piece of the puzzle that if we're doing that, can we enlist more things? Can we have more access to more places as we're doing this? Again, building lifelong activities. We want to address those gaps and those problems from the pandemic, but we want to make sure that the children and the community really are looking at lifelong skills and lifelong things that they can start to bring about. Once again, supplies and materials, let's do this is again, our purchase of Chromebooks. We can offset some of our Chromebook purchases to have that, or some of our hardware and software to be purchased through 21 through 24. Again, that will offset, and the more that we can get ahead of it, the more room we're going to have in our budgets moving forward with having those items on hand. So that, really looking at that, that's kind of in a nutshell and planning what we put in place for the federal stimulus monies. Any questions on the federal stimulus monies as we're here? I tried to paint in broad strokes, and as we move forward in the budget, again, we'll break down some more of these pieces for folks as well.
These things all seem great for students and families, and I'm happy to hear that we're cognizant that the funding may eventually diminish or run out in a few years down the road, and we're not going to be left on the edge of a cliff, trying to support expenses that we can't cover without the funding again. So fantastic.
Well, and Mike had mentioned, one of the key aspects of the use of these funds is to make it accessible to all kids, and that's where that conversation that he shared about the transportation piece is huge, because we don't want to have to limit who has access to it. So in addition to being thoughtful about how to keep it going, we also obviously have to be thoughtful about who can take part in it. So thank you.
So the other thing I think that's worth mentioning is this is not an easy application process. And so I would just like to extend my appreciation and gratitude for, I know it requires a lot of people to be involved in that, and you submit and you get unsubmitted and you have to go back and resubmit. It's a pretty cumbersome process, so congratulations for your efforts around that and to stay steadfast in remaining student focused in doing that, because I think sometimes the whole process can be a big turnoff.
I have found that if you can get in with some of the people who are reviewing and have some meaningful conversations, they're more apt to take your phone calls. One of the hard pieces of this is that the department has not been operating on site. They've been operating remotely at home. So making contact with a lot of the folks is probably one of the more difficult things. So thank you, I appreciate that. So the next piece I'm looking at is really the impact of foundation aid restoration. So the governor's budget came out last week, and we'll share that in the next meeting with folks. We've had kind of a chance to digest it. And taking a look at it, they're looking for full restoration of foundation aid. If you remember back, if you want to go in the way back machine, about 8-9 years, we were talking about gap elimination in the millions. where they didn't give it back to us because they didn't give it to us in the first place. They withheld money from us, and really because of basically what we had in our reserves, we were able to stem that tide. This is talking about fully restoring where we should be on a level and equal basis across the state for our foundation aid. Last year we had, and I'll show in slides in the next budget meeting, our restoration into last year. This year it's looking that we will be roughly probably 50 to 55% in our restoration, and then next year going into the following budget year, so that would be 23-24, would be a full restoration of the foundation aid, which is a good thing, because last year at this time we were talking about the fact that they're going to take foundation aid away and freeze our other aids coming into this situation. So we're in a good process, a good point here with the foundation aid. Again, as we showed some of the information in the next meeting, you'll kind of see where some of the accounts ebb and flow with this. But it is a positive piece. It's a positive piece for the state. And it's the first time in my tenure in 9 years in this position where we've seen positive flow in the governor's run. And hopefully with the legislative run further down the road, we'll see a little bit more improvement. So as I said, in the next budget meeting, we'll review all that process for that. The next part, one of my favorite pieces, is the tax levy limit, also known, and I will not show the video this year, the 2% tax cap. Again, it being only a 2% tax cap because that is the allowable growth factor is set at 2%. So last year, the allowable growth factor was not very high at all. It was well below 2%. This year, due to the influx of stimulus monies into people's spending, really that 2% that they base it on was really over 4%. But again, New York sets this multiplier at 2%. So taking a look at that, what does it mean? Our current tax levy, our actual tax levy this year is $17,027,266. Again, the limit, what we could have gone out at, was $17,385,352. That was a 3.19% increase from the previous year's actual. Estimated now, in taking that, using that 2% multiplier, and again, I'll walk you through some of the formula in the next meeting, the estimated tax levy limit, the maximum amount we could go out at next year, would be $17,679,744. That's a $652,478 increase from this year's actual, and it would roughly be 3.83%. So that just kind of sets the plate, sets the kind of the level of where we're at. Again, just to talk about down the road at the end of February, we're going to be voting on just what that levy limit is. Not how much we're going to spend in the budget, but just what that levy limit could be for the district. So again, I'll provide you with that information, but this is the first snapshot. Actually, they got out all the necessary information to us last Thursday, so I was able to dump it in the slides. But we'll talk more about that, and I'll explain it a little bit more. And then if people need a cure for insomnia, I can provide more detail on it for you. Okay, Mr. Turk?
Thanks, Mike. So as we do each year, there are considerations that we'll keep in mind as we move forward through the process. Obviously, you know, we're a people business, so the salary and the bargaining units contracts are something that we have to keep in mind as we go through. We have been negotiating, as you folks know, with transportation, food service, and the aids and assistance. Next year, a couple of the larger units, certainly the HTEC, the Homer Teachers Association, and the administrative unit. And then each year we have many folks that don't have bargaining units but are under existing terms and conditions that we'll have to consider. Health and dental insurances typically rise 6 to 8% every year, so we'll have to keep that in mind as we move forward. With staffing and retirements, we just hit our first unofficial deadline for folks to let us know that they're planning to retire. Each year, we tend to get a handful of those people, and this year it looks like it's the same, but we'll have to keep in mind and monitor that as we move through. The next deadline is the binding deadline in March, and we'll have that information available to you as well. And then the big one, you know, we would like to think that by now we wouldn't have to talk about pandemic, but we're obviously still in the middle of that, so we'll have to try and do our best to identify what those consequences are, financial consequences as a result of the pandemic. So those are all things that we'll keep in mind and continue to give you some feedback on as we go through the budget process. And with that, we'll ask for any other questions that you might not have yet asked. If you come up with any when we're out of the board meeting, feel free to email Mike or I. We'll make sure we get right back to you with the information you requested. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, at this time, if I could please have a motion to move to executive session for the purposes of discussing the employment history of a particular person or persons and negotiations.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. True.
That's actually better than what it looked like earlier. I can demonstrate after we're not on camera.
Because you've seen me on a number of occasions.
Yeah, I know. We got third on you.
If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I could please have a motion to approve our regular meeting minutes of January 11th.
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments regarding the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I have no communication to share, no correspondence, and we have no updates to tonight's agenda. Superintendent Turk, comments from you?
Yes, I've got a few. I'll try to keep them somewhat brief, but whenever I can, I like to try to identify positive things that our kids are doing. And I had a very nice email that our athletic director, Mr. Lisi, shared with me, letting me know that we have 7 fall sports teams that reached the level of scholar athlete status. And we're always proud of that, always happy to be able to report that to you, especially given the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and it's oftentimes difficult to keep kids active. So wanted to let you know about that. I also wanted to let you know that we had a number of our students who participated in the All-County Choir Festival held at the Cortland City Schools on the 14th and 15th of January. Again, a nice contingent of kids had the opportunity to perform for an appreciative crowd. And Dave DeGennaro also let me know that we have 10 students who will be attending area All-State at Ithaca College the first weekend in February. 3 of our musicians and 7 singers. And so, again, throughout the pandemic, I think our district has worked hard to try to keep kids active and moving forward, both academically and socially and emotionally. And I just wanted to share those things with you tonight. The other thing I wanted to share with you was that we have been, like most folks in the news, you've seen information coming out about the mask mandate. Last night, a Nassau County Supreme Court judge said that the ruling, the mask mandate that had been put in place by the New York State Department of Health and the governor was flawed. The process was procedurally flawed. And then today, the state appealed that decision, asked for a stay of that decision while the appeal went through the process. Found out about 5 o'clock or 5:15 today that stay was granted by the appellate court. So in a nutshell, what that means is we had a mask mandate, we still have a mask mandate while it works its way through the courts. We did have some people today that called, and we were tempted to talk to everybody to basically share with them. We follow established policies and guidelines in the district, and in some cases that puts us in the middle, but we're here to make sure their kids are safe moving forward, and we'll continue to do that. And I did send that communication out to families right before the meeting tonight. So any questions about any of that? Now that I did find the email, I wanted to just point out the teams that were recognized as scholar athlete teams. It was girls soccer, boys cross country, girls tennis, volleyball, and field hockey. So a well-rounded group, so proud of them all. And that's what I had.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Yeah.
Moving on to new business, if I could please have a motion to approve the warrants and claims auditor's report.
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? If I could please have a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Informational items, you have the investment summary and budget status report. If I could please have a motion to accept the reports from the Committee on Preschool Special Education.
So moved.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? If I could have a motion to accept the reports from the Committee on Special Education.
So moved.
Questions or comments?
Who was it moved by? I'm sorry, Casey?
Yep. All set, thank you.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion to approve the budget guidelines.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? If I could please have a motion to approve the listed policies for first reading.
So moved.
Questions or comments, and if you have a question or comment, if you could please identify the policy number for us.
Just a general, at least for me, having the warrants and claims and the policies in the same meeting just makes a lot of extra.
Oh, a lot of reading?
At least for me, I have this weird thing where I actually read all the warrants and claims and read all the policies, and that was just a lot to
Okay.
process it. So if we could stagger those, that'd be helpful, at least for me. I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing.
We can do that.
Suck it up. So.
Duly noted.
If it makes you feel any better, there were actually more policies than what we brought forward.
And I appreciate.
Right, geez, we trimmed it down.
That's
I appreciate the restraint. I just I saw the vote, I was like, oh, okay. A little extra time, but.
Are there questions or comments related to any of the policies? All those in favor of first reading? Opposed? Abstentions? If I could please have a motion to approve the field trip request?
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments?
Impressive amount of fundraising already.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're at the portion of our meeting for community voices. I did not see any signed up. Are there any wishing to be heard? If I could please have a motion to approve personnel?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments regarding personnel? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Informational items, Superintendent?
Yes, we have a couple for you. The first is a BOCES staff update. There's a student intern that is going to be working with the BOCES visually impaired teacher at the high school. And then we also had some high school fundraising updates for you to take a look at. We've got some kids that'll be, or some groups rather, that'll be doing those this spring.
Superintendent, as it relates to the BOCES intern, that they go through a BOCES vetting process on their qualifications?
They do, and they'll also be working in conjunction with that teacher. They won't be working alone with kids. Yep.
Board committee reports, policy map. I don't know if Emily or Keith have anything they want to share relative to policy. It's a really good process.
Yeah, yeah. Appreciate everybody digging in and reading all those things.
District committee reports, I believe we have professional learning committee.
We do. Mr. Ebner's group met right before the meeting today. So, Jeff, if you want to give folks an update.
Yeah, we had a nice meeting, and we're planning for the March 21st Staff Development Day. A lot of ideas were shared. You know, everyone has kind of their own view that they bring to these meetings, and they you know, the ideas, you talk to your colleagues, you talk to your departments, you come and, you know, what do you want this day to be about? You know, the day's about professional learning. So, just some of the topics we talked about, you know, with the implementation of the Promethean boards, you know, for Josh's department, you know, Lancey's been, you know, our technology coach, she's been hot and heavy working with teachers, creating videos. She created a great tutorial for teachers. She's almost like a newscaster, standing in front of the screen with pop-ups, press this button, this is what happens. It's pretty cool. So we're going to be releasing that. But Promethean board training, we're looking at, you know, other technology training like Seesaw training, Freckle training. We talked about, you know, maybe starting some TCIS updates on that day. Looking at strategies to engage some of our unengaged students. You know, that's always a good hot topic for teachers because they're seeing a myriad of engagement levels at this point. Fast bridge training as well. We talked about, you know, possibly putting a session together on co-teaching strategies. You know, some of our co-teaching teams haven't been together that long, and it's a good time to, you know, show them the 7 or 8 different models of co-teaching that can be deployed in a co-teaching setting. And then There was some conversation about incorporating movement into the classroom, you know, having kids sit for long periods of time, that's not good. My favorite subject in school was recess. I'm not sure if that was a subject, but I aced that class for sure, so I completely love that idea. And then we talk a lot about self-care and teachers, you know, supporting the people taking care of the kids, you know, and that, as far as I'm concerned, that's the district responsibility too. You know, take care of the people, taking care of the kids, and we talked about, you know, possibly getting some people in, you know, some massage therapists. I got a chiropractor, a local reached out to me, he's willing to come in and share some of his services. You know, people said they would contact their local gyms, get them in, maybe offer some memberships at a discount, those type of things. But doing something in the afternoon to support teachers, you know, social, emotional, and health, and you know, have them walk out that day, you know, thinking and knowing it was a productive day, that we care about them, we care about their well-being, and that, you know, their job is hard. They have the hardest job in the district is teaching other people's kids, and we understand that as a group, and we want to make sure we fit that in on that day, so that will be a priority.
If I could have the chiropractor's phone number.
House calls.
Any questions for Jeff?
Yes, Jeff, I think it'd be helpful if when the agenda rolls out, that we can see how the topic areas are
Yep.
specifically lined up with the strategic
Yeah,
plan.
absolutely.
So I know you're very conscientious when it's put together, but I think it makes sense to have that in the marketing and the advertising, why and how it lines up. Because we've been very,
Absolutely.
very focused on making sure all of our endeavors line up with our strategic plan.
Yes, absolutely.
Additional questions for Jeff?
Do we have a date for a student engagement?
Well, I'm glad you said that, Keith, thank you. I had the pleasure of meeting your son and Aaron on Friday, and their task right now is recruiting some colleagues. So I would like to get back together with them. I said I'd give them a couple days to recruit some of their classmates, and you know, they were great. And one of the things we talked about was recruiting students not like them, right? Because Aaron Leonard was the other student. You know, they both agreed. They both said that we have a very similar school experience. And we want to make sure that we recruit kids to this committee that have a different experience. So they're going to spend a couple days recruiting some classmates. I'm going to get back together with them hopefully by Wednesday or Thursday. Within a week or two, I want to have a set date for our next meeting and what we're going to do in that date. I recruited Mrs. Gilbert to help facilitate some of that work from the district end. And hopefully within 2 weeks, we'll have a set date within a very short time frame for meeting number 2.
So the neat thing about those two students is they are unique in the, I think that's a great mission for them because
Yep.
they span all different student populations
Yep.
and they're very approachable young men.
They are
So
very impressive.
I like that they were charged with that. I think that'll be really fruitful. Okay, I think we're at board member activities.
Been to several sporting events, both women's basketball, men's basketball, wrestling. Went to the all-county concert. It's nice to see all these winter activities moving forward with not many hiccups. Also, I just witnessed via social media today, it was good to see that ag science class, I believe, went on a trip to local commercial dairy, which is nice to get some kids out in the.
It's nice to be able to do those things now.
It
You know,
is.
we
Yeah.
took a little break for a bit, and it's
Yeah.
nice to get back to
That's
more of the
great.
normalcy, yeah.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah.
Casey, was this the first time since COVID that the all county has been able to come together and do that? Was this their first?
I want to say.
It was
yeah.
2, yeah, I mean, it's been
Yeah.
2 years anyway,
it's been-
yeah.
It's one of the last things they did before.
That's
Yeah,
right,
and then-
right before we
then-
shut it down, yeah.
2 weekends before it was all county here.
Yep,
And then.
Yeah.
yeah, because it was the
I think
first,
that's right.
first weekend in March when we shut down.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what was your, you've had some experience, what was your sense about this? Did it, was it familiar? Did it seem like what's happened in the past? And, you know, I think back to that first graduation we did.
Yeah,
And just, you know, our kids were so absent and
Yeah.
I just wonder if now coming back and doing, they seem more
Look at
engaged
it.
and healthier.
Looking at everything, not just, you know, everything that, you know, and a lot of us have been to all these events too. I mean, it's, even though the masks are on, it seems very normal. The kids seem upbeat You know, I mean, they're excited about their activities, including, you know, everything from music stuff to sports. I mean, we've got some exciting things with athletics right now with, you know, some successful programs, you know, and it's good to see the kids. But even something as simple, I didn't witness that, you know, I would have liked to witness. I'm curious to hear from Brooke how the kids were acting, going out onto a farm, and it's not just a farm. I mean, right now it's so important, in my opinion, not COVID or not, but there's such a far touch. You know, I'm very passionate about the ag industry, as most of you know, but there's such a huge gap between what agriculture, you know, what people understand about agriculture and what actually goes on and how important it is. It's nice that we're trying to bridge that here at Homer, because we are, like it or not, we're an ag community, we always have and always will be.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's something Brooke could put together and share with the board with that.
Sure.
Additional board member activities?
Just one real quick update from BOCES. I was happy to see that BOCES finally formalized the agreement with the Portland County Sheriff to provide school resource officers at the BOCES buildings in Portland County. So they'll be providing all the services that an SRO does, and it's, I was glad to hear that. So I wanted to let everybody know that was coming up immediately.
I just want to show appreciation. I know early on in the winter season, our buildings and grounds folks got caught a little off guard by some weather, but since then, that's my sign that I gotta get up and get moving in the morning. I hear them out. I hear the I think I hear the snow blower first, and then usually the plow trucks hit the parking lot. But they've been right on top of it and making sure that our parking lots and our sidewalks are safe and accessible. So just acknowledge the correction, and after a misstep, they've really been on top of it.
Appreciate that. We'll make sure that Mr. Cavalier knows. Mike's done a lot of work with Scott and his crew, and we're seeing the fruits of it now, so.
We all got spoiled during Christmas, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
I know it.
So I also had opportunity to attend women's varsity and JV basketball, as well as wrestling, and I am, as always, impressed by some of the nuance behind the scenes stuff, right? When we get a home court opportunity to see our students come and support the team, to see the boys sports teams there supporting the girls sports teams, and vice versa, is pretty incredible. I don't know if you caught it. I was telling the superintendent, after the girls game last night, the boys actually were going to have practice, and to see both of those teams hit the stands and clean. So I went and, you know, expressed appreciation to the coach. What a great leader. He said they're accustomed to, that's the expectation. We don't ask them to do that or remind them to do that, and they're just really good-natured about. And you know, they're cleaning up a student section that's pretty messy. They clean up a visitor section that maybe doesn't have the same investment in cleaning up after themselves, and they're just as happy to do that. And you know, I think it's just such a great representation of our school spirit and our sense of community. I thought it was really classy. And I constantly marvel at wrestling and the scope of the students that come out to participate in that. They're not all from the same ilk, and the way they come together and support each other, and watching even from school to school, how we interact and take care of each other. Wrestling's pretty unique, so I enjoy that opportunity to see that. And we have opportunities to see members of our music program perform the national anthem before we open those contests, and that, you know, that will give you chills to see our students be able to do that, stand up in front of home and away crowds and sing their hearts out in honor and tribute to our country.
And I'll just add to that, I know that recently Mr. Lisi's been working with students to be the announcers at those games and give them that experience, and I know that the kids, I had a chance to talk to a couple of them that were doing it, they got a big kick out of that. It's a great experience, especially for somebody that thinks they might want to do that moving forward. So, and then the wrestling announcer, unbelievable.
Left a little desired.
I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah, he's okay. I'm hoping to find my replacement.
I went to the 8th grade parent night at the high school.
Deep breath.
I know, guys, it's new to me. And it just seems really weird,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but,
Don't blink.
yeah, but, yeah. It was funny, on the way to parent night at the high school, she was talking about what her plans are for college and where she wants to go to college. Like, let's just take one step at a time, okay?
Don't blink,
I'm having a
that's all
hard
I
time
have to
with
say.
this step.
Yeah, don't blink.
But it's really cool to see how driven she is and ready she is for the high school. And they did a nice job of introducing kind of the platform in which she can use to get to that next step.
Upcoming events, Superintendent?
Yes, wanted to let you know that we do have a short instructional day, end of the semester, this Friday. We put out some communication about that, both from the building and the district level earlier this week. And when we come back from that, we'll be in the middle of, or the beginning of semester 2 and all of the wonderful things that come with that. So looking forward to all of the activities moving forward.
If I could please have a motion
So
to adjourn.
Second.